Well, hi everyone. This is Ken Ham, and I'm in the Creation Museum office right now. And this is where most of our Answers in Genesis staff will work here at the Creation Museum. We have other offices, of course, at the Ark Encounter and our design studios. And I'm actually using our technology, my computer, through Zoom to talk with the director of our Latin American ministry, and that is Joe Owen. And he actually resides in Mexico. And he doesn't speak Australian, but he speaks English, American English, and he speaks Spanish, fluent Spanish. And he translates for me when I'm speaking in Spanish-speaking countries. So, Joe, it's great to have you on. I wanted people to learn about what's happening in Latin America because there's some incredible hunger there for this ministry of Answers in Genesis and what we teach. In fact, I would say the hunger is far greater than what we see even in the United States. And you've seen some incredible success, had some very intriguing stories, interesting stories. So first of all, why don't you welcome everybody in Spanish and then speak in English?
Pues bienvenidos a todos, el Señor los bendiga. Es un placer hablar con ustedes desde México. Good morning, or afternoon, this is Joe Owen, sending a greeting from Mexico, Answers in Genesis, Latin America.
Well, great. Well, Joe, tell us a little bit about what's been happening there. And you've had some fun times and sort of strenuous times, but you had some exciting times of blessing. And you get openings into places that just blow my mind to get this message of creation apologetics and, God's word and the gospel in.
Amen. Yeah, this is a really exciting time for Latin American work. Being a historical side of it is that the Protestant Reformation just hit Latin America, and that's 69% of all of the New World are Latin Americans. So that's many millions, over 600 million people. And I mean, that just to think of the potential of that. So AIG kind of started going into Latin America pretty strong about 7 years ago. And the timing was impeccable. And so with the time I have, if you don't mind, I want to just share with you a little bit of AIG's world in Latin America over the next few minutes. And because so much happens, last year I had 64 conferences. Because of so much happens, I can only go through the last few months. And if there's any questions or comments, I'll be sure to help out with that. Just a lot of what we do is also in Peru. In Peru, I think it was September of last year. We're doing some speaking in these stadiums and TV programs that are going to 6 satellites around the world. And this one here was really interesting. This is in Lima, Peru, speaking with a ministry that just a few days before this, the students closed and put up barricades around the whole university because they're upset with the government about something. And everybody was setting up for this conference, got stuck in there for 4 days with no food. And so the ministry I was with were putting food in baskets over the walls and even feeding the people who put the barricades. That was the only way they let us feed the people that were setting up for the conference. And then once they finally came to an agreement with the government, they let us in, and we had a great conference. As you can see here, many people teaching creation apologetics, and you see the hunger and the amount of people here. It's because they live with this false dichotomy of either you're a believer or you believe in science. That's what everybody's trying to portray today, And just to say, well, actually, let me show you the work of many great scientists who start with the first verse of God's word. For them, that is just an explosive thing to understand that. And the reason why I need to say that's so important is because in Latin America, the universities are free for many people now, and the way their government and their society is set up. So for the first time in their history, I mean, a huge percentage of the youth are going to universities. And that is wreaking havoc on the church because their universities are all Marxist, and they're controlled by Marxist professors and movements. And so as soon as they get to university, all they hear is everything you've ever learned about God, about creation, it's all a lie. And they never even heard of such many people as there exists such a thing as a Christian who can with science and the Word of God, make a defense of biblical origins from the very first verse. To them, that's something never even heard of. And so you can kind of see what's happening there. Just they're from Colombia doing some
Joe, just
teaching.
a quick question about that
Yes, sir.
other one there. I mean, how many young people were in that audience when you look at that?
This is probably 70% young people here.
So there's a real hunger nonetheless to listen to what you've got to say. That's amazing,
Yes,
because
sir.
we don't see those sort of responses in the United States or Australia or Canada or the United Kingdom or anything like that.
Yeah, and you can tell that they're hungry too, because we sold 2 pallets full of books, and within like 3 hours, whole huge pallets full of books just flew. Just people came running down and grabbing them, because they know they love the Lord, but they have a lot of doubts in their faith. A lot of them are shaking now in their faith, and they want to be able to give an answer. And you know, it's kind of like in maybe in the States, we get so used to, we take for granted ministries like Answers in Genesis sometimes. But there's people all over the world, and God's plan is for people all over the world. And getting these resources translated and getting them out is just such a great encouragement. Sometimes we don't realize that unless you're going out in the field and seeing it. And that's why those who support ministries like Answers in Genesis, you know, this ministry, they just don't know where it's going. It's going into very far-reaching places. I was in the Amazon rainforest just a few months ago, and even teaching people who go to seminary from the tribe that Jim Elliot reached in the Amazon. I mean, you just don't know how far reach this ministry has. And even in Colombia and the universities, these universities here, these are non-Christian universities teaching, and this is the medical department, the people studying medicine. And Dr. Jeanson and spoke to this group, and then from here to many churches and schools, as you can see, they open their doors and they fill up. And then we had a debate this is a totally Marxist university who have celebrate days of Marxist leaders, and 2 of their professors, one of them studied at UCLA in the States, challenged Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson and myself. And we had a wonderful debate there. You know, it's hard to get a debate like this in the States. But even though they were kind of insulting to us some of the time, well, at least we had the open door to speak here. And an atheist group at the end stood up and for about 20 minutes were yelling at us, as you can see in this video. But even with that happening, at the end, we had some.
So there was an atheist group?
Yes, there's an atheist group saying, "How dare you talk about religion in these These are our universities. How dare you come into our property?"
So for about 20 minutes, they chanted that.
Yeah, so security had to escort us out of the building. And so Latin America is so open, but the universities are so Marxist that there's this huge contrast between the two. But one of the great things, Ken, is that Latin America kind of works on who you know, not the rules. And so if you know a contact in the university or a professor who's a believer, that's kind of your contact to get in. So the doors are still open to get even into these universities. We spoke 3 weeks before Richard Dawkins in Colombia just 2 years ago, where he went to speak at the same university. And it's about who you know, and the Lord is giving Answers Genesis friendships with deans of departments, with professors who are Christian. And one thing is, Ken, I don't have a PhD in science, but I have people with PhDs in science who are Christians asking me questions. Joe, will you help me understand this? Joe, I heard y'all talking about races. How can I understand the ethnic groups and from Adam and Eve? And I was talking about who am I for you to ask me? But that is the wonder of Answers in Genesis resources. They take the simple and be able to explain even to the wise biblical apologetics. And I have never had a PhD scientist, Christian, say, Joe, I am a Christian, but the information you're giving, that's too simple, it's not true. Never has it happened. They've always said, this is great information. I can use this in witnessing in my own university. And that's something that wonders me.
Yeah, I just jump in here too. And it's a good point for everyone to know that I found even people who have PhDs know an awful lot about a little bit. if you think about it. And often they don't have the big picture. And so to give them the big picture, they've never sort of thought about it like that before, and it means a lot to them. And I think that's true of even Christians. Many Christians don't even have the big picture when it comes to, Christian worldview and looking at what the Bible really teaches when you start with that foundation in Genesis. But anyway, yeah, go on. This is exciting.
Yes. Yeah, and then from there, like I'm telling you, this is only the last few months. If I could, it would take me hours to go through the last 7 years. This is just in the last 6 months of the ministry. Then from there, in the United States, Ken, I got to speak on the same platform as you, of the Answers for Pastors Conference, One Race, One Blood. And we had people come up from Latin America. And this conference, it was translated simultaneously to people wearing headsets in the Answer Center. And one of the men who came up was the man on, if you're looking at my screen, he's the man on the left, the man with the shortest hair, almost bald. His name is Pastor Mario. He is the president of a large denomination in Peru. I don't know if I'm supposed to name it or not, so I'll leave it unnamed unless you say. Of a large denomination in Peru. We all know this denomination, by the way, and they have members, thousands of people. Their churches in Lima have up to 6,000 members per church. And then the guy that on my other side is the president, is the dean of the seminary, and the guy who's crouched in front of me, he's the president of the National Seminary. They came up, they said, okay, the content you all have, and this is one thing, Ken, that a lot of people tell me when they come. Also, that huge ministry from Mexico, we did the mega conference just last year. They said the way that I see you as Christians doing things better than people in the world. And they said, we're not used to that. We're used to many in the church doing things like subpar. And they said the way you have it organized, the way everything started exactly on time, your audiovisual was set up, all the content was all good. It was nobody just blasting off, hot steam. They said, Joe, can we go into a written ministry agreement with our whole denomination and Answers in Genesis to where you teach maybe 3 to 4 times a year at our teaching conferences, our seminary, our pastors' conferences, because we want to make sure before I retire, he told me, I want to make sure that our denomination stays conservative. And we all are dealing with these kind of liberal tendencies trying to come in. And so we are now in agreement with them, and he brought me down already 3 times this year, and it's only March to be teaching at the national conferences. But then from there, I went back to Mexico and did some conferences with Dr. Danny Faulkner, and this is a large tech university, one of the biggest ones in Mexico City. And then Ken, you came down, and we had just a couple people come out to our mega conference.
Yeah, I remember that. How many people were there? It was a few thousand, wasn't there?
Yeah, they were counted at the end between, I think, 52 to 5,500 people.
And
in the whole
what
area.
amazed me was it was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I had no idea where I was. I know we drove north of Mexico City, and then we went off on some roads, and then we drove on some, I don't think they were roads, maybe some tracks, and then we drove on something that didn't even look like a track. And we eventually get to this area and this facility, and go, and they let us in the gate. The guards let us in the gate, and then they set it up. And the next morning, thousands of people pour in from I don't know where. But that was exciting.
Yeah, that's one of the amazing things that you can see, Ken, the hunger. If you were to do a conference like this in the middle of nowhere in the States, it'd be really hard to get it filled up like this. These people not only traveled from Mexico City an hour away, we had people can travel from 8 to more hours away, going through toll booths, going through all that you have to get through Mexico to get to this conference. We had people from the other side of the country there that I even know, and I even knew that, hey, how'd you get here? They said, we drove all the way from where we came. So it was exciting for the whole country. And then right from there, I went back to Peru, and I did a debate in and one of the oldest universities of all Latin America, the San Marcos, a huge public university, and had a wonderful debate there, and then went to a really high area, more conferences, then to Queens, New York, and then came into 2020, started January in the Dominican Republic. And then now this is the national seminary of that denomination where they're having me teach, bringing in pastors from all over the country and doing sessions with them, teaching them creation apologetics, the foundation, Genesis, the foundation of every Christian doctrine, whether it be directly or indirectly, and the importance of it. But so many people just say, well, you know what, let's just, you know, we can agree to disagree on Genesis. Let's just focus on John 3:16, as if John 3:16 was over some kind of a vacuum. No, it has an historical foundation. Even Jesus keeps pointing back to Genesis and answering different questions. Then the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and then Peru, they brought me back. And this is a national conference for all their teachers of their schools and Sunday schools about biblical sexuality that I was teaching here for a few days. And then Cancun, because you have to suffer for the Lord sometimes, no? And right after that, this is all just in the last 2.5 months. And then from Cancun, I want to talk to you really quick about this movement that started in Latin America. There's this movement that's called Don't Mess With My Children. It's a movement against gender ideology in the schools. And this movement is growing all over Latin America. Now it's in Europe too. And even the president of Brazil has had this banner on his pulpit while he's speaking. And this movement is an anti the liberal left, the gender ideology, homosexuality, teaching of our children movement. And this movement, when they have marches, brings over 1 million people marching in these cities. This is one of the movement's marches, I think, in Lima. As you can see there, a lot of people are marching saying, we're going to say no to this. And this is all started by a young man named Christian Rosas. Christian Rosas in Lima, he's a congressman's son there. And he's probably going up for Congress, I would guess, pretty soon. I hope he does. And Christian Rosas studied at Liberty in the States because he had a teacher, an Australian teacher in Peru, teaching him from Answers in Genesis resource. And he used to debate his teacher all the time against Genesis. But then he was convinced, he was shown, he believed it. He went up to the States. He got a scholarship in the Liberty. Now he started this movement that's all over Latin America now, and he does debates on live news, kind of like someone you would see, in American national news, debating people with gender ideology. You can see him here everywhere, debating everybody. Well, he invited me to speak at this conference 3 weeks ago that just happened in Lima, to speak to what was supposed to be about 500 legislators from all over Latin America. And I went and did. Now, because of the coronavirus, there was about 280 to 300 people. And I got to speak there with all these different people speaking. And even like one of the ladies here, she's going up for vice president of Argentina. And I got to speak alongside these people, share the Answers in Genesis message on the sanctity of life and on gender ideology, contrasting that with biblical creation and God's design from the beginning. And then after I spoke, I got to give 2 talks. People just come up from everywhere talking to me. And let me just give you, if you don't mind, a quick testimony from Christian Rosas, the guy who's behind this whole movement. He's the one who invited me. And this is what he had to say about the time that I got to spend with him.
Hello, Dr. Ham. This is Christian Rosas from Lima, Peru. And I'm sending this video to thank you very much for having Pastor Owens coming to Peru. His role in the development of the Congress that we held just a few weeks ago has been marvelous. All of the Latin American countries are really happy, thrilled, and interested in learning more about the ministry of Answers in Genesis. I thank the Lord for everything that you guys are doing, and specifically for the ability that God has gifted Pastor Owens to share his truth, not only with a theological basis and a sound doctrine, but also at the same time with great knowledge regarding logic, philosophy, and science. We hope that we can continue working together as we spread the good news and the truth, and as we defend it nowadays in such times of turmoil. May God bless you, and may God allow us to continue working together. Bye-bye.
I asked myself how many supporters of Answers in Genesis really know the impact the ministry is having around the world. I mean, these are telling times that are changing history, and for God's glory.
It's just amazing. And that's the first time I saw that little testimony video that you showed there. I hadn't seen that before, but just the the impact that even Answers in Genesis has had on that young man and the movement he's leading, which is a big movement. It's so amazing. I just stand back in awe of what God is doing.
Yeah, this is he took me out to eat when I first met Christian Rosas, and I got to eat with his father, who's a congressman as well. And he was laughing, saying that how he used to debate his teacher, and he used to ridicule his teacher. And his teacher would just have these Answers in Genesis articles and just knocked every one of his arguments out. And then he finally submitted and said, "Lord, I think I'm being prideful. I think you're right, Lord, the way you said it happened." And just to see how that helped form a young man who now says, well, if I can take Genesis 1-11 as the eternal truth of what happened, exactly how God said it, I need to go out there and defend everything the Word says about it. We can't disjoint Genesis 1:11 from the rest of the Bible. It is if I can't believe it in Genesis 1-11, how am I going to believe it the rest? And so you can just see now an impact that has millions of people raising a voice that started out with a young man who wanted to debate his teacher against God's creation. This is
That's
amazing to see that.
Well, Joe, we're sort of running out of time here. So what else have you got to share with us?
All right. Well, from there, I was doing media interviews, and everybody you see next to me are legislators from all over Latin America after the talk, coming and asking me questions. Actually, this guy here, Fabricio Alvarado, he just barely lost the election in Costa Rica for president. He came up and said, "Hey, can I take a group of leaders and church leaders and leaders in my country, and can I take them up to the Ark and get a tour and get this explained to us better so we can understand and take this teaching to my country?" So good Lord willing, later on this year, I've been talking to him since. We want to try that. These are all legislators from Mexico. That's me there with my daughter, who's to my right, my oldest daughter. And these are legislators actually in my city where I live in Mexico. We met there. These are legislators from Bolivia who are asking for help in their country. This is a molecular geneticist from Colombia who works in a clinic that she says, she's the one that came up and said, the science of what you taught, which I borrowed from Dr. Purdom, was spot on. I want to learn more about that. And so I'm getting her connected with Dr. Purdom, but she wants to use it to witness in her country as a PhD in molecular genetics, working in that field. And then, well, if you don't mind, I'll finish telling you how I got out of the country, because the coronavirus thing was just starting to become a danger. People were talking about it. And
yeah,
then,
I think it's interesting for you to tell that, because, as I was reading, for instance, the journal of John Wesley, and I was thinking, oh, he had interesting times when his horse became lame and it was raining and ended up in some cold, damp place and got sick. And so I thought, oh, as we travel around, we all have our issues, whether it's with horses or planes or whatever. So, yeah, tell us what happened to get out of here, to get home.
Yeah. Well, and this is just one of many things that happens that the Lord keeps bringing us through. The hand of God is on this ministry in Latin America because he's protecting me. There were many difficult things we've had to go through. This is kind of an interesting thing that just happened. While we're in the conference, a Lima newspaper, the largest one, put out that we were going against the prohibition that the president put about no more than 300 people for conference. And so the next day, we had to finish the conference early, and all these people came out. I saw them with masks from the government trying to shut us down. And then they tweeted, as you can see here, that we're obeying the standards. But even with that, the next day, even though the government said that we were obeying, they put me on the national news doing the race talking about one blood, one race, and saying that on national news that we weren't obeying. Well, the very next day, Sunday, I wanted to get out. I was going to fly out Monday. I got a call from this pastor, that relationship that we built. And he said, "Joe, you need to get out of the country. Can you get out?" And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "They're about to close the borders. No one in or out. And you're going to be stuck here for, we don't know how long." And so I called, and they're selling plane tickets for $4,000. So I said, "No, I'm not going to do that." And so I went and got a hotel right next to the airport, because they were closing the street, sending the army down to put everybody in quarantine in their houses. So I said, well, I don't want to not be able to get to the airport. So I went and got a hotel last minute right by the airport so I could walk to the airport. And then this report came out. You can see all these people trying to get out of the country. This is how the airport immigration is, full of people that are leaving before the borders close. Nobody will be able to leave or enter Peru starting midnight Monday. Well, my flight was 10:30 a.m. Monday. So I said, well, I should be okay. The next morning, Monday, March 16th, 7 a.m., you can see behind me all the people packing into the airport trying to get out. And then I board my flight. We take off at 10:30 a.m. And then as soon as I land, I get this text from my friend in Mexico. I mean, and my friend Diego in Peru. He said, hey, it was a miracle that your flight left. As soon as you left, the problems began at the airport. And I said, I am so grateful to God. And he said the news reported that they were canceling flights because they did not want to bring airplanes to Peru and have to leave them stuck here. It was definitely an obvious miracle. Everyone thought the problem would be at night when they're going to close the border. But as soon as I left, they started canceling all the flights. And we got out an hour before they started canceling all the flights. And so I'm home with my family now. And this seems to be kind of a pattern. Lord's teaching me that this is his work, but I'm going to have to trust in him while doing it.
Well, thanks, Joe. And that'll help people be able to pray for you as well. I saw the quick slide there of some of the resources that we now have in Spanish. Spanish would be our biggest translation ministry. We've translated many of our materials into other languages too, lots of other languages, but Spanish is the biggest. We have a tremendous Hispanic outreach, and we have a special outreach at the Ark and the Creation Museum as well. So I want to thank you for that testimony and a reminder that we need to be praying for all of our speakers as we travel around and some of the situations we can get into. God obviously got you home to be with your family. Otherwise, you could have been stuck there for who knows how long, maybe even months. You just don't know. But so anyway, well, thanks, Joe. And this is for our Facebook Live and YouTube. And, you know, while the coronavirus has the museum and the Ark closed to the public, we're doing all sorts of special things for our supporters so that they can follow us. And actually, they're finding out a lot more about behind the scenes. Many of them will have not known about this part of our ministry that is impacting all those people in Latin America. So they're finding more about what we do because of this situation. So I look forward to talking to you again about the ministry.
Likewise, Ken. Thank you.